This is the walnut most of us are familiar with. A hard shell with a dry brain-like structure inside, something we typically think of as an autumn harvest. But this is the walnut that I'll be needing for today's recipe. Both nuts come from the same tree. The only difference is a few extra months of ripening. At this early stage of development, the shell inside the green walnut has not hardened yet, so the whole thing can still be cut through easily with a knife. Here in Romania, where I film the videos on this channel, English walnut trees are a very common sight. They've traditionally been grown for both food and wood, planted in gardens, along roads, and around houses, especially in the countryside where many homes have at least one. You also see them in cities and in open fields where squirrels and birds like jays and magpies often help spread them by burying nuts for later. So as you can imagine, it's not that hard to come across them. And since there are so many walnuts in this field where we walk our dogs, we'll be picking a small bag of green walnuts to try making an old-style green walnut preserve. This species is commonly known as the English walnut, although the name is a little misleading. It did not originate in England, but across a much wider region of Eurasia, and humans have been cultivating and moving it around for so long that its exact native range is difficult to separate from its cultivated one. The name also helps distinguish it from other walnut species like the black walnut, which is native to North America and also edible. If you have access to a different walnut species, make sure to check that the nuts are safe to eat and whether you can use the green walnuts in the same way, because the timing, bitterness, and preparation may not be exactly the same. Around here, the sweet spot for picking these is around mid to late June, which probably makes this recipe feel so special, because if you miss the season, you have to wait until next year. I don't want to make a huge batch, so I'm only picking this small bag full here. Right now, it feels like a pleasant foraging trip, but to be honest, green walnuts are not exactly a friendly ingredient. They are full of tannins that make them so bitter, and they also stain badly. The green outer husk contains compounds that oxidize quickly, turning dark brown, almost black. So if you prepare them without gloves, your hands will remain stained for days. Back inside, and I have my prep area all set up for the mess that will follow. At this stage, they look more like small green fruits than the dry walnuts most of us recognize. Alright, let's begin. The first step is cleaning and cutting the green walnuts. I have 2 bowls, one where I'll be washing the walnuts and one where I'll put the peeled ones, plus a cutting board and a sharp knife. And most importantly, gloves. The ones I'm using here are nitrile gloves. Our local recipe calls for cutting off the dark green outer layer because that is the most bitter and also the most staining part. And so, the fun begins. The idea is to keep as much of the pale white inside as possible. That part is the developing walnut, and you can even see that brain-like structure starting to form inside some of them. The walnuts both taste and smell very bitter at this stage. They are nothing like their future dry version, which we're more familiar with. They smell sharper, almost medicinal, and even with their green husks removed, they still bleed a greenish-yellow stain into the water. I'm down to the last 2, and once they're all done, I'm going to let them sit for a few minutes in some clean water to try to draw out some of that extra bitterness. Once the walnuts are peeled and trimmed, you need to weigh them. That way, you can adjust the recipe properly. Use the same weight of sugar and half that weight of water. I'm also adding some lemon juice and a vanilla pod, but those are simply for extra flavor, so you can adjust them depending on what you like. Either way, I've added the exact measurements for this recipe in the description as well. All we need to do now is make a syrup from the water, sugar, lemon juice, and vanilla, and boil it for a few minutes until it slightly thickens. At this point, I can add in the walnuts and keep boiling until this thin mixture starts to caramelize and turns a deep brown. Like so. The preserve is done, so I'm going to fill up a few small jars and let it set. This is just one of the many versions of this green walnut preserve. Every region has its own way of making it, and I've come across recipes that require boiling the nuts multiple times in fresh water to reduce the bitterness and keep the preserve lighter in color. And I've also seen recipes where the very bitter dark green husk isn't removed, specifically to keep more of that bitter walnut taste. This one I've shared with you is simply the most common way to make this preserve in Romania. Let me know in the comments if you've ever tried something like this and if you liked it. Also, if you are familiar with green walnut recipes, please share how it's made in your area so we can all get to know some tried and tested alternatives. If this is your first time here, don't forget to subscribe so you can follow along with the foraging, cooking, and nature-related experiments that I'm trying. Thanks for watching, and I'll see you again soon.